Ladies and gentlemen, hello and good afternoon from Jakarta. Welcome to today's FPCI-GRIPS Virtual Public Forum on the Disrupted World Economic Order, Unilateral Tariff Weakening WTO, Trade Weaponization, etc. I am Naila and I will be the Master of Ceremony for today's event. This public forum is brought to you by Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia, FPCI, and the National Graduate Institute for Policy Studies, GRIPS Japan, and is the first forum of this year FPCI GRIPS Virtual Public Forum Series. Ladies and gentlemen, today I am pleased to welcome over 350 participants from across 26 countries tuning into our channels. Welcome to those coming in from Indonesia, Japan, the Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, and many more. Please welcome our panelists today, Bapak Iman Pambagio, Director General of International Trade Negotiations at the Ministry of Trade of the Republic of Indonesia 2012 until 2020, Ambassador of the Republic of Indonesia to the WTO 2014 until 2015. Professor Yasuyuki Todo, Professor at the Faculty of Political Science and Economics, Waseda University. Dr. Nguyen Antoine, Senior Lecturer at the Faculty of International Economics, Diplomatic Academy of Vietnam. Dr. Jayan Menon, Senior Fellow at the ICS Yusof Ishak Institute, and our moderator, Jenny Sariwinata, Program and Research Manager at FPCI. Ladies and gentlemen, to begin, let us invite Professor Kunihiko Shinoda, Professor and Executive Advisor of the GRIPS Alliance. Please, with pleasure, Prof. Kunihiko Shinoda, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Ignaria. And distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. And it is a great pleasure to welcome you all to this public forum co-hosted by FPCI and GRIPS. And thank you for taking the time to join us today. We often hear the phrase, the world economic order is being disrupted. But this is not just an abstract idea. It is something that directly affects our daily lives. When a country suddenly imposes higher tariffs, supply chains are disrupted overnight. Our companies are forced to change their production plans, and consumers face rising prices. In short, the stability we once took for granted can be undermined very quickly. In recent years, we have witnessed unilateral tariffs, the weakening of the WTO dispute settlement mechanism, and what has been called the weaponization of trade. These developments represent not just technical changes in trade policy, but the deeper challenges to the very foundation of multilateralism that has supported global growth for decades. And the impact goes well beyond statistics. Disruptions in supply chains mean shortages and higher costs for everyday products. For companies, investment risks increase. For people, jobs and livelihoods are placed under greater uncertainty. The Asia-Pacific, particularly ASEAN, remains the center of global growth, but also finds itself on the front line of great power rivalry and rising economic fragmentation. Yet, there's also hope. By making use of frameworks such as RCEP, which was coordinated under the excellent chairmanship of today's panelist, Pak Iman, and the CPTPP, in which Japan took the lead, we can strengthen regional cooperation and thereby open a path to greater resilience. At a time when the global economy faces divisions, deeper regional integration can serve as a powerful response, offering stability and predictability to governments, businesses, and citizens alike. In today's discussion, I'm especially eager to hear your perspectives on 3 points. First, how different countries interpret these shifts in the global economic order and what choices they see before them. Second, how we can build safeguards and safety nets in an era when trade is increasingly used as a political tool. And third, how we can envision and work toward a more sustainable and inclusive economic order, even in the face of uncertainty. So there is no single answer to these questions. That is precisely why it is so valuable to bring together experts and policymakers from different backgrounds. By sharing experiences and insights, we can move beyond analysis and take steps towards practical solutions and stronger cooperation. So let me conclude by emphasizing this. In times of turbulence, cooperation and rules matter more than ever. I sincerely hope that today's dialogue will help us reaffirm that principle and explore ways to put it into practice. Thank you once again for your participation, and I look forward to a lively and meaningful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks, Professor Kunihiko Shinoda. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I would like to invite our moderator to begin the discussion today. Jenny Sariwinata, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Naila. Good afternoon from Jakarta, everyone. Thank you for joining us today in this very timely discussion. This is actually a topic that worries everybody and has implications on everyone's business, everyone's lives as well. So we're glad to be joined by our distinguished speakers today, Bapak Iman Pambagio, Professor Yasuyuki Todo, Dr. Nguyen Antoine, and Dr. Jan Menon. Thank you for joining us. Before we start, just to briefly set the context, of course, again, this topic is very timely. The so-called Liberation Day by President Trump was a day that shocks the world, and you could see all the headlines and your social media and newspaper. Everybody was kind of shocked, but not shocked in some ways. The unilateral tariffs, a big amount of it, to about 90 countries, your country, my country, allies, non-allies, we all were put, we have this anxiety. And this is putting the whole trade order in disruption. But if you look into it deeper, it's just the tip of the berg of building up from what the world has already been facing, a fragmented geopolitical and geoeconomic landscape. And at the same time, as the topic suggests, one of the issues that we will raise as well, the weakening international mechanism that was supposed to be the backbone, such as the dispute settlement mechanism that we have in WTO. We'll be also discussing about that. So let us start with a big question for each of the panelists. The big question that lingers through everyone's mind, of course. It's been about 6 months since the so-called Liberation Day. So 3 big questions. Where are we now, 6 months after that? How is our country handling that? How's the world handling that? And how has it changed the way that we approach international trade? So let me start first with Bapak Iman Pambagio. Pak Iman, yes, Indonesia, we did reach a deal with President Trump, but what does it mean for Indonesia and the whole region?
Thank you, Jenny, for giving me the first opportunity to respond to that big question. I think we in Indonesia really not surprised when Trump came up with this announcement in April, because we have seen this the fragmentation of global supply chains since Trump 1.0, and then followed by COVID-19. President Biden just follow the approach taken by President Trump, and then now we have Trump 2.0. I think we have somehow anticipated this kind of situation, but it is quite concerning and raise a lot of questions in Jakarta, and I believe in this region. How Trump came up with a different set of tariff applied to different partners. What are the basis of coming up with those different numbers? So it is quite confusing for some. Although I advise our government not to rush to the negotiating table, but since everyone goes to Washington trying to find a deal, better deal with the administration, then Indonesia follows suit, right? So what we've seen since there is that the multilateral trading system is put in a big questions. When you negotiate tariff with the administration, there is no clear reference point. US doesn't apply their standard in WTO. There is no standard, and as we expected, we anticipated earlier, it is not only about tariff, it is non-tariff measures, non-tariff barrier, IPR, you name it, investment, and so on and so forth. So the sky is the limit. It would be quite, challenging to negotiate with Washington, where there is no reference point. They're not begins with, for example, a scoping paper or something. So I think since the disruption of our value chains, again, Trump 1.1, and then disruption caused by COVID-19, war in Ukraine, etc., etc. Indonesia has started to see ways to diversify our partners. We are looking at the Middle East, for example, South America, Africa as well, and other countries. We accelerate the negotiation with some countries, but unfortunately, there is no common position taken by ASEAN. That's where my worry, my sadness came. There is no unified ground for ASEAN to tackle the situation as a group. It seems like everybody tried to do this beauty contest, to satisfy Washington. It is not a good starting point for ASEAN. I think looking into the future, it is time for ASEAN to regain confidence, to reinforce our integration agenda, and deal with this fragmented global supply chains as a group rather than as individual member states, even we are competing with each other. I think I'll stop there. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you, Pak Iman. I think it's interesting that you mentioned diversification, because we just finalized our agreement with EU, and then just yesterday with Canada as well. I think what happened recently just becoming catalyzed for us to push the negotiation even faster. Now let me go to Professor Yasuyuki Todo. View from Japan, Professor Todo. Over to you.
Yes. Okay, so first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this very important webinar. So basically, I'm not a representative of Japan, but still I'm going to talk about this issue from the perspective of Japan. And before answering to your question, I would like to emphasize my main argument today. So basically, we are facing risks of supply chain disruptions recently due to geopolitical issues and protectionist policies, and also natural disasters. But to respond to these risks, we still should stay open to the global economy. at the same time, we must carefully manage geopolitical concerns. So this is my key message here. And already, back Iman mentioned that diversification of supply chain partners is quite important, and international cooperation is also important. I fully agree with him, but I also would like to add that international cooperation between Japan and ASEAN is also very important. So now let me answer to your question about the effect of the Trump tariffs. So let me actually show some slides. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the predictions about the impact of Trump tariffs made by the Institute of Developing Economies, IDA-JETRO, in Tokyo, as shown. They use a computable general equilibrium model to create this prediction. So one thing to keep in mind is that the analysis was based on tariff rates announced on April the 2nd. So those rates were mostly higher than the actual rates that ended up being applied. So these predictions probably exaggerate the effect a bit. But still, the main takeaways are very clear. The impact on Japanese economies looks relatively limited, right? Why? So because the tariffs on Japan are lower than those on many other countries, including China and Vietnam. So U.S. imports from countries facing higher tariffs like China may divert to imports from Japan. But now, if we break it down by industry, the picture is a bit mixed. Automobiles, which make up a big share of our exports to the U.S., could be affected very substantially. But electric machinery could actually benefit because of the trade diversion. So overall, the model suggests that Japan seems emerging. So the Japan GDP might even rise slightly by about 0.2% due to the Trump tariffs. So maybe we don't need to too much worry about the Trump tariffs. And what about the actual data since the tariffs started last August? So Japanese exports to the US last month dropped by 14% compared with a year earlier. Automobile exports fell even more, down 28%. Huge effect. However, here I would like to emphasize that the total exports from Japan to the world barely moved, declining by only 0.0%. So that matches the prediction of a limited overall effect of the Trump tariffs. Okay, so now let's turn to the actual how Japanese companies are reacting to the Trump tariffs. So this table showed the results from recent surveys by Teikoku Data Bank, PwC, Tokyo Shoko Research, and RIETI. And that asked companies about the impact of Trump tariffs. And the results vary, as you can see. But here I'd like to emphasize that a lot of companies don't expect major negative effects, like the case of Tokyo Shoko Research. 67% said no effect predicted. So this is in line with the overall GDP effect I just mentioned. Okay, and next, this table taken from a PwC survey gives us more detail on how companies plan to respond. So many companies say they will reorganize supply chains by diversifying suppliers and customers across countries and by shifting some production and investment to the US. So those moves reduce losses from the Trump tariffs. So they also help reduce, so it's a diversification. So it's also help reduce the risk of supply chain disruptions from any future protectionist policy or geopolitical factor. So in that sense, these reactions are a very positive step, I believe. However, let me stop sharing slides. So, however, there remain some concerns. One concern. So, as part of the agreement with the Trump administration, Japan has committed to invest $550 billion in projects in the U.S. specified by the U.S. government. So these forced investments could easily become inefficient, leading to huge losses for Japan. So we need to turn this into something more beneficial. So one way is to link these investments with research collaboration between Japan and the US. So recently, actually, the Japanese government promotes international research collaboration between Japanese semiconductor companies and US companies, like between Rapidus and IBM. And this works well, so that Rapidus, a newly established Japanese semiconductor companies, succeeded to create a prototype of a 2-nanometer semiconductor. So this implies that international research collaboration, research collaboration between Japan and the US can benefit the Japanese economy very much. So my own research shows that when Japanese companies invest abroad in the R&D, they often boost their productivity at home through knowledge diffusion. So if we align the new investments with research in the US, we would create real win-win situations for both Japan and the US. So to sum up, Japan's best strategy for dealing with Trump policies is twofold: diversify supply chains and promote research collaboration with the US. I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Todo, for the very comprehensive elaboration and data as well. Let me go to Dr. Nguyen Antoine, a view from Vietnam. It's a country that is very interesting to look at, Dr. Nguyen. It was in a very difficult position, especially where there is a big China factor in it as well, when Vietnam was accused of transshipping Chinese goods for China to avoid the tariffs from the US. Yet Vietnam was among the first to get the deal done with President Trump, despite whether it was counted as a success or not. Could you please share your view about this current situation? Dr. Nguyen, you are muted.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes. Many people thought that Vietnam was
You are cut off, Dr. Nguyen. Can you hear us? Okay, I think we lost Dr. Nguyen for a bit. While we wait for Dr. Nguyen, let us just go to Dr. Jan Menon first. So, Dr. J, you for long have monitored and have been closely following the region's trade and investment landscape, the overall economic landscape as well. Please share your observation.
Okay. Yes. Thanks very much, Jenny, and thanks to the organizers, FPCI-GRIPS, for having me today.
Dr. J, I think we can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me?
Okay, now we can hear you. Yes.
Ah, okay. Oh, sorry about that. Yep. Okay. I was just going to say that I was really looking forward to hearing also from Dr. Nguyen, because Vietnam is a critical player in this region. But I think for ASEAN's perspective, which is what I might focus on, the Liberation Day tariffs.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
Dr. Nguyen. Sorry, we'll go to you after Dr. J. We lost you earlier. If all right.
Yeah.
Oh, do you want to go to Dr. Nguyen?
Yeah.
In case we lose him again.
Because something wrong with my smartphone.
No worries. I think
Okay.
continue.
And let me talk about the Vietnam. When we received the Liberation Day tariff, and we also think that many people thought the Vietnam will be imposed by high tariff, but not so much too high as 46%. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, continue.
Okay. And so when we receive the information, we do not openly criticizing the Vietnam, usually stress mutual benefits, and we exploit the comprehensive strategic partnership with US to persuade them and to lobby US counterparts, emphasizing Vietnam's role in US supply chain and in balancing China. And I think the tariff is a signal of vulnerability. The tariff highlights that Vietnam, something like China, can become targets when our trade surplus grows too much compared with the US. So this reinforces our awareness of dependency risk. So far, Vietnam is aware of dependency risk on Pacific Triangle, namely depend too much on import from China and from South Korea, and depend too much on export to the US markets. So but Vietnam reached the global economic order in the future, and I think the global economic order ahead has three features, namely is fragmentation and protectionism. And the Trump tariff reinforced my view that globalization is no longer pure rule-based, but it is increasingly powerful, driven, and subject to sudden political change. And secondly, the global economic order in the future is depend on the US and China relation. So in my view, tariff is interpreted as a part of the broader US and China decoupling. So in my view, supply chain to keep reconfiguring with the Vietnam both benefits as production relocate and expose as a potential next China in the USI. So thirdly, in my view, there are some opportunity in naturality. And so far, many countries, including Vietnam, see the middle position and policy of non-aligned are asset. So if global trade splinter, the Vietnam can offer ourselves as a stable hub inside ASEAN with access to CPTPP, RCEP, and EU markets, and so on. So I think there is no fundamental change in our view of international trade. The Vietnam growth model is built on export-led industrialization and FDI attraction. But tariff maybe have some for adjustment in international trade in Vietnam. So firstly, it will be diversification. So we have to reduce the over-reliance on the US, but lean move on EU, on ASEAN and CPTPP country. And secondly, Vietnam will move up the value chain. So tariff underlies the need to shift from lower value assembly to higher tech manufacturing. So Vietnam is not easy substitute. So thirdly, Vietnam needs stronger legal shield. So Vietnam will push harder for WTO compliance and compliance of other free trade agreement that Vietnam signed. So that we can protect ourselves against any unilateral tariff. The fourth, the Vietnam move up green and digital economy. So positioning ourselves in new areas such as renewable IT, digital service to appeal to wider range of partners. And in sum, the Vietnam received liberalization day tariff with unease but pragmatic, treating as both a risk and a reminder to diversify. And it also requires Vietnam to cooperate with other ASEAN countries to find out the way to overcome the unilateral tariff of the US. So we win access by hedging, diversifying, upgrading our role in global supply chain. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Nguyen.
Mm.
We go to Pak Jay. Sorry to cut you off earlier.
No problems. Yeah, no, I was glad to be able to listen to everyone now. And I think a lot has been said. So let me continue on from where I was, which is, when the Liberation Day tariffs first arrived, Southeast Asia was particularly badly hit. And this was because the formula that was used to set these tariffs had nothing to do with reciprocal trade barriers, as they suggested, but everything to do with the ability to coercively negotiate and to maximize unequal coercive bargaining power, right? So the more dependent a country was on the US market, the higher their tariff. And this is why we saw Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar with the highest rates. Now, that was where we were. Then we had the 90-day pause when the bond markets threatened to have a meltdown. Trump paused those tariffs. And then now we have a mismatch of rates, mostly lower. In fact, all of them are lower. But in an arbitrary way. There's no sense to any of these changes that have taken place, right? You have Laos and Myanmar, two countries that are going through crises, economic and political in Myanmar's case, being hit with the highest rates in ASEAN of 40%. Most of the rates now are around 20, which is better than where we were, but still 20% is a non-negligible amount. Now, I think for ASEAN, a lot is going to depend on what happens with the US-China deal. And this is because ASEAN's supply chains are still China-centered. So we don't know what the outcome is going to be. You can think about scenarios. A best-case scenario would be going back to where we were before Trump 2.0, which was around 20-odd%, but then there was stacking, so maybe even 40-50% might be a best-case scenario. A worst-case scenario would be to go close to where we were before the pause, which was a prohibitive rate of around 150%. Of course, there's variations. So we probably land somewhere in between, but how close we are to the either extreme is going to be critical. Critical for China, but also for ASEAN, because of their interdependencies through supply chain linkages. We have to wait and see what happens there. But on the wait and see point, I think we also have to recognize that whatever happens now, this is not going to be the end. This is really the start of a new beginning, right? Where Trump, arbitrarily raises tariffs in a way that's not just unpredictable, but highly costly. We've seen just today new tariffs being imposed on pharmaceuticals, furniture, so the next round will be sectoral tariffs of all kinds, whatever he sees as a threat to domestic production. You can see, and the branded pharmaceuticals are being hit with 100% tariff. So these are not, these are incredibly high and distortionary rates. So I think we need to wait and see, because my fear is that 1 year down the track or so, when these bilateral deficits do not narrow, and they're not going to narrow because of the tariffs. They might narrow if the US goes into a recession, which looks 50-50. A global recession looks less likely now, but a US kind of stagflation outcome is a real risk, with rising prices from the tariffs, and also a slowing of softening the labor market, which you're already seeing in the US. So when the intended outcome, which is the narrowing of these deficits or even a closing of the gaps, when that doesn't happen, will we have another round of tariffs? I think that's very likely. We know that Trump loves tariffs. He thinks that it's paid for by foreigners. It's a great way to raise revenue, and it's a great way to actually reshore production. So for all those reasons, I think this is just the start of a new beginning, and the more diversified countries can be, as others have said, the better we will be. So I think reducing the current high dependence on a highly unreliable trade partner is the writing on the wall. And, it's going to be costly initially, but it's a cost worth bearing, because I think this will not go away anytime soon. So ASEAN must diversify and must start very soon. So let me stop there, Jenny, and look forward to the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you, Pajay, for your answer. I think it sheds light on what the rest of the panelists have as well been saying. One same point, diversification. But my question is, we still have 4 years with President Trump, which, like Pajay said, it's just the beginning of whatever next upcoming, right? So, Pak Iman, when we talk about diversification, what short-term moves are we talking about here, and what long-term moves are we talking about here? Because diversification cannot happen overnight, but we are anticipating any shocks that might come again within the 4 years or even beyond 4 years. So, Pak Iman.
Well, thank you, Jenny, for the question. But this is the way I see the racing picture. What my reading is that this is the time when the US, US influence has receding somehow, if we know that in the past we have this Britannica Pax, now we have the Americana Pax. I think it's time to see the rise of ASEAN Pax. We consider US as the global leaders. Everybody wants to have a good relation with the US. Of course, we continue to appreciate our relation with the US, but the world has been changing now. We are seeing the multipolar pattern of global economy. I'm not saying that we are entering global economic disorder, but rather the reconfiguration of global economic order. We see the rise of BRICS countries, the rising importance of China in the global chain, and so on and so forth. So I think I'd rather see our current situation as a moving picture. Now, it depends on how ASEAN could position itself. Again, it is not, to me, it is not nice to see ASEAN, competing with each other. We are going to this beauty contest in front of Washington, but why don't we ASEAN enhance its internal integration by way of raising the intra-ASEAN trade, for example, intra-ASEAN investment, and of course we have this outer concentric circle. We have the ASEAN +1, we have ASEAN +3, we have RCEP, and not to be exclusive, we also have this forum such as East Asia Summit, where all the elephant sits together there. So it is time for, I believe, for Indonesia and all ASEAN countries to get back to where we have to start from. It is ASEAN. I'm a strong believer of ASEAN, but unfortunately, due to this situation, countries think about short-term safety net, but losing this longer vision of where we have to position ourselves in this changing global economic landscape. But it is my belief we are seeing the waning of US as a hegemonic power, and we are moving to a multipolar economic order. I think that's somehow respond to your question in a different perspective.
Thank you, Pak. If I may, just a quick follow-up question. It's interesting you mentioned that among ASEAN countries, there's also, of course, competition and so on. So where do we, as ASEAN, can cooperate on, and where, which area is left for us to cooperate on, and which area is left for competition? Because it's always a question on what we can agree on and so on when it is competing with national economic interest.
Right. Basically, I would like to hear the answer from Jayan on this, but this is my personal view, actually. We have this ASEAN economic integration agenda. I think we have to look into this agenda in its entirety and try to prioritize what would be the pressing agenda for ASEAN to move forward. Because some of these agreement, protocol, and so on and so forth do not reflect the current global situation where technology, digital technology in particular, take over the old way of doing business among ASEAN countries. So we have to revisit all this ASEAN economic integration agenda, in a sense, and try to prioritize. And I think it is time also for ASEAN countries, the 9 ASEAN countries, and soon 11, to look into the difficult question whether in ASEAN we can do some sort of division of labor, because we have different factor endowments, of course. Can we just focus on particular areas? Some would provide perhaps basic rough products. Other members provide the intermediate products, perhaps, and the other would come up with the final products, and we sell it to ourselves, to our RCEP countries, to the rest of the world. So I think there is an urgent need for ASEAN to revisit the economic integration agenda and to make sure that ASEAN stay relevant to this ever-changing global landscape.
Thank you,
Perhaps
Pak Iman.
I pass it to Pak Jayan. How to
Thank
see
you.
it.
Thank you, Pak Iman. While we're at it, yes, let me invite Pak Jay to follow up on this. Is it too hopeful for ASEAN to pursue so? And adding to this, if I may as well, where is ASEAN intra-trade role plays here as a solution?
Okay, thank you, Jenny, and thanks, Pak Iman. I agree with what Pak Iman was saying, and like him, actually, I'm a big believer and supporter of ASEAN as well. I mean, I'm sometimes critical because I think we all expect so much more from ASEAN, and we want them to do, even better. On the intra-ASEAN trade issue, Jenny, we've spoken about this before. I think you know my views that I see the low share or the stubbornly low share of intra-ASEAN trade of around 25% or so, not as a sign of failure necessarily, but actually possibly a sign of success. And why I say that is because ASEAN has used regionalism to promote globalization. So it hasn't just looked inward, but actually kept the doors open and used the regional integration program to promote globalization and overall trade, and not just intra-ASEAN trade. So it hasn't become highly preferential and, to actually distort or divert trade to each other. So ASEAN's overall trade has grown very sharply, and the fact that its intra-ASEAN trade share has remained at around 25% simply means that intra-ASEAN trade has grown at the same rate. That's all. It hasn't grown faster or slower, but at the same rate. So intra-ASEAN trade has been growing, but the share has just been kind of stagnant. Having said that, I think it can be increased. We've seen tariffs come down in ASEAN, but a lot of non-tariff barriers have risen in its place. And very often these non-tariff barriers are more pernicious and more protective than the tariffs that they've replaced. But I see the future growth in intra-ASEAN trade as mostly coming from services. This is the fastest growing area of trade, and this is where a lot of potential lies. And to accommodate this, ASEAN needs to do a better job in promoting greater labor mobility. And I think that's where challenges lie, both in skilled and in the unskilled areas. And I think that's where ASEAN can help with itself in the overall diversification push. Now, just quickly, beyond ASEAN, I think, as Pak Iman and others have already mentioned, I think RCEP is the obvious grouping. It's a pity that India is not in RCEP, but let's include India in ASEAN +6 as, the next target or the immediate neighborhood target growth area to pursue diversification as we reduce our reliance on the US market. And then we have to look at new markets, I think. The fastest growing parts of the world now is not Europe. Europe, I think, is obviously an important area for the diversification push. And I think a lot will focus on Europe. But the fastest growing areas going forward are areas like South America, Latin America, and Africa. These are, and the Middle East. And these are largely untapped. And this is where I think, potential exists in slowly increasing trade. But Europe has to be a key growth alternative for substituting the US market. And let's not lump Canada in with the US. Canada is another area we could look at. And I think finally, CPTPP, I think, will provide a fulcrum for future negotiations in terms of trade agreements that can promote diversification. We discussed earlier how Indonesia, after almost a decade of stalled negotiations, was able to sign a deal with the EU. We know that there were a lot of non-economic issues standing in the way, the whole deforestation issue, because the EU doesn't do deals without bringing in a lot of other non-economic issues, everything from environment to human rights. Now, in this new era of Trump, we are compromising on these sort of concerns, and it's about time, I think, to separate some of these issues, not to tie everything in with trade, and hopefully an ASEAN-EU deal is becoming a prospect going forward. And I think that will be a great way to promote diversification. So let me stop there.
Thank you, Dr. J. Let me go to another view from within ASEAN before I go to Professor Yasuyuki. Dr. Nguyen, so still on the question about how ASEAN can work better on this, I also want to ask how Vietnam maximize its strategy in capturing the global opportunities, unlocking new markets out there in Europe, Latin America, and so on, but at the same time leveraging ASEAN. Is it a good balance in between, or is ASEAN so far still a competition for in the point of view of Vietnam?
Yes, thank you very much, Jenny. And first of all, I would like to share with two my previous speaker, Iman and Menon, about the intra-ASEAN trade. In fact, intra-ASEAN trade account for only 20%, so very small if compared to the EU intra-EU trade. So we have to find out why we try to push intra-ASEAN trade, but only 20%. Because the economic structure of the ASEAN are similar to each other. Also, agriculture, I mean the tropical culture, durian, mango, and chili, and dragon fruit, and so far and so forth. So ASEAN to each other, to compete with each other, to export to other markets. And also the electronic and electrical appliance. So therefore, in my mind, is most difficult for promote intra-ASEAN is the economic structure same to each other. And secondly, I also think ASEAN have some obstacle preventing deeper intra-ASEAN trade. For example, non-tariff measure and regulatory diversion. Apart from that, the complex and fragmented rule of origin for RCEP, for ASEAN Korea, FTA for ASEAN China, FTA for ASEAN India, FTA, and so on and so forth. So multiple overlapping bilateral and multilateral FTA with different rule of origin raise paperwork and prevent firms from fully using preference. And thirdly, I in my mind is a logistic custom delay and poor trade facilitation. Also the cost for the ASEAN in intra-trade. For example, border delay, weak single window system, and poor hinterland connectivity raise the cost. And fourthly, in my mind, is a service restriction and cross-border data and digital friction. Many services such as transport, logistics, finance, professional service still face restrictions that prevent seamless regional supply chain and digital trade. And fifthly, MSME capacity and product standard. In ASEAN country, most of the company and firm entrepreneur is a small firm. And small firm like know-how, paperwork capacity, and certification to export originally. So strictly in my mind is economic structure as I mentioned. So this make ASEAN country to compete to each other. So therefore, and in my mind, to promote intra-ASEAN trade, we should have some suggestion. First is to establish regional cooperation mechanism, including set up earlier warning system for supply chain. And second, to carry out the trade facilitation and border digitalization, including set up ASEAN single window and custom and tracking system. And apart from that, we should to implement industrial and value chain policy. And next, we have to carry out finance, risk insurance, and support for micro and small and medium enterprise, particularly the expand trade finance, except for SME. And Nick mentioned about the labor, and I also share with Dr. Menon about the labor and workforce is upgrading skill and digital adoption of labor force and exchange labor force and open markets for labor force from countries like Vietnam and Myanmar and Laos, Thailand to work in the Malaysia or Singapore or so on. And next is about being infrastructure energy resilient. And I think we should invest in resilient logistic and energy security for industrial cluster. And last one, I think the ASEAN should carry out the social and political safeguards. And from the Vietnam view, we also try to cooperate with ASEAN to move external shock like unilateral tariff from the US. We also diversify export partner by promote export to the EV FTA, I mean the European Vietnam free trade agreement country and the CPTPP country and ASEP country. But ASEP, I also to share with Dr. Menon, so far ASEP is only 15 country, like India. So if the India joins the ASEP, will be better for us to promote trade between the 16 countries in Northeast Asia and Southeast Asia and South Asia. And next one, Vietnam also now continue to follow the side FTA with country like Mercosur group in the Latin American, and we also to follow to the side FTA with Gulf Cooperation Council, I mean GCC, and we hope that we can negotiate and persuade US also still open up for Vietnam community, because we also try to be transparent so that we do not claim by I mean the by tranship community from China and so on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Nguyen. Now let me go to Professor Yasuyuki Todo. We have been talking about diversifications and what we can do to better de-risk and build more resilience for our own country and region. But we haven't talked about how do we ensure that the next trade order after experiencing all of this remains a rules-based trade order, because currently whatever agreements we already have, let's say with the US or what deal we had, it doesn't mean anything. And moreover, the mechanism that we have in the international organization like WTO has been under scrutiny for its weakened dispute settlement mechanism. So if the backbone is not strong, if the backbone is not built, all of these efforts probably would not mean anything in the future if another Trump comes in. So what can we better prepare in terms of strengthening the WTO and any other ways, be it region-based or multilateral-based efforts in making sure that the trade order that we have is rules-based? Professor Todo, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. I actually would like to answer to your previous question about diversification first. So basically, diversification is quite important to Japan too, right? And obviously, diversification should be, toward trustworthy countries. So from the perspective of Japan, natural partners for diversification is ASEAN countries. So unfortunately, Dr. J mentioned EU, South America, even Africa as possible partners, but he didn't mention Japan as a possible partner. But from Japan, ASEAN is quite an important partner. So I'd like to mention that. But unfortunately, recently the trade between Japan and ASEAN and the FDI from foreign direct investment from Japan to ASEAN has been quite stagnant. Although the share of China has declined, but the share of ASEAN is not increasing. So we need policies to strengthen the link between Japan and ASEAN. So I actually would like to propose 3 types of cooperation between Japan and ASEAN. First is information sharing. So mostly the one major obstacle to diversify, expand supply chains is a lack of information of foreign markets and foreign companies. So, of course, for example, JETRO of Japan, the public institution for export promotion, is collecting information and share it with the companies in Japan. But still, these efforts would be much more effective if these public institutions across countries work together and exchange information on local markets and companies. So we need some kind of international framework for this purpose. Obviously, as many speakers mentioned, CPTPP and RCEP, and even the free and open Indo-Pacific can play a role for this purpose. And also, second, Japan and ASEAN need to collaborate on environmental and labor issues in supply chains. Dr. J already mentioned that EU is pushing, imposing strict standards in terms of sustainability. And this can be a kind of a big hurdle for ASEAN countries and other global South countries to link with the Western countries. So naturally, many Asian countries find it easier to continue relying on China. So to overcome this, Japan should work with ASEAN and to design kind of a new international framework that allows for gradual improvement in environmental and labor standards. So that way integration with Western countries becomes more realistic and more beneficial. And I'd like to emphasize that the Asian Zero Emission Community, or ASEC, led by Japan, is kind of a good model. It aims for carbon neutrality, but allows flexible approaches tailored to each country's circumstances. So this kind of cooperation should be expanded. So I think because of time constraint, I stop. I move to the WTO issue. So of course, we need to strengthen and supplement the WTO's dispute settlement mechanism. And one important alternative mechanism is the MPIA, the multi-party interim appeal arbitration arrangement. So it serves as a temporary alternative to the WTO's appellate body. And right now, 57 countries have joined the MPIA. So this includes the EU, Japan, China, Singapore, Malaysia, and the Philippines. And the MPA has already shown some results, at least among its members. For example, China's anti-dumping measures on stainless steel products from Japan were overturned because of MPIA. But of course, there's a clear limitation. MPIA rulings don't apply to non-members. And unfortunately, some very important players like the US, South Korea, India, and several ASEAN countries are not members. And US almost certainly will not join. But if more Asian countries, ASEAN countries do, the MPIA will gain greater legitimacy and effectiveness. So I hope to see wider participation from other countries. And obviously, another way to reinforce the WTO framework is through regional trade agreements. So for Asia, as many people already mentioned, the CPTPP and RCEP are particularly important. And so expanding members of CPTPP and RCEP is quite important to maintain the rule of law in international trade and investment. Okay, I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Todo. I invite the audience, if you have questions, you can send it to the chat box, or you can raise your hand as well. Please keep your questions concise and short in the chat box as well as verbally, if you'd like so. Let me first go to Pak Jay, if you want to add up to what Professor Todo has mentioned about the dispute settlement mechanism. Yeah.
Sure. I'll be relatively brief, Jenny, so that we have more time for Q&A. But just to clarify, I didn't mention Japan because it's included in RCEP, right? So when I mentioned RCEP as our immediate neighborhood, of course, Japan, China, Korea are all included. But actually, your point does raise an issue that reminded me that when I mentioned India not being in RCEP, and we should engage more with India, I should say we should engage more with South Asia as well. I mean, South Asia is not just India, but I think ASEAN, South Asian trade potential is significant. And now that India's, I think misplaced concerns about China in the economic sphere, at least, is diminishing, there's a lot more potential for a broader RCEP type design for diversification. But anyway, on the revival of a rules-based or a return to greater rules-based trade, I agree with what Professor Todo was saying. I think the MPIA is promising. The US will never join it. The US is not interested in dispute settlement because it feels that it cannot bully its way through it. And that's why it has worked to undermine WTO's dispute settlement mechanism. It claims overreach and so on, of course. But when things weren't going their way, they basically paralyzed the appellate body. But it's not just Trump. It started with Obama, in fact, and has been further accelerated recently. But the MPA, I think, is one, and hopefully more countries will join. And we need something in the interim while the arbitration is taking the place of an appeals process. It's hard to be optimistic right now about how we can sort of get more rules-based trade to work, except to say that the US is in the world. It's an important part of the trading world, but it's 15%. And so, 85% needs to try and sway the 15 and not be swayed by the 15%. And I think hopefully, the mutual benefits of rules-based trade and investment will come to dominate the future of our commercial relations. So let me stop there, Jenny.
Thank you, Pak Jay. Someone raised their hand, Erlangga Putra. Please raise your question short and concise. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for the answer, Professor. And thank you for giving me this opportunity. Apologies if my mic is a bit scuffed. I am currently in an open place. My question is quite elementary for the economic perspective. And actually, you just kind of did answer it, stating that the US is actually only 15% of the global world trading, and we shouldn't be swayed about it, especially as the global south. But I guess I will ask now as a follow-up, like, what is the biggest hurdle for most countries in the ASEAN region and maybe nearby region from switching to this 15% to the other 85%? And as basic as this sounds, like, if it's really that easy, why haven't we been doing it? Or is it that we've actually been doing it so far? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Erlangga. I guess whoever panelists want to answer this question, you're allowed. But first, want to invite perhaps Pak Iman, if you have an answer to this.
Okay. The voice is quite difficult to capture, but if I get the question correctly, I believe it is not about turning from 85% to 15% or the other way around, but rather, again, it is about diversifying our engagement. I think heavy reliance on one or two economies is not the good idea. It is time for us to diversify. The more you get friends, then the safer you will be in the future in terms of future shock in the global economic order. And I believe that it is back to another point raised by one of the speakers. The raise of bilateral and regional FTA here and there should be seen as a building blocks, because what we have been experiencing in I think the 2 decades now is the lack of confidence, and even in the last few years, perhaps 2 years, we experience a trust deficit among economies. So I think through this building block process, FTA, CEPA, and perhaps PTA, between region, between countries, it will create sense of confidence that we should engage in a rule-based fashion. And perhaps in that context, perhaps ASEAN as a group can approach, of course, Mercosur or EFTA countries, Eurasia's countries, GCC, African continental FTA, for example. So, and soon ASEAN EU FTA. So it is not about fragmenting further the global trading system, but we try to build confidence for everybody's. So it is not about how to switch from 15% to 85%, but I think it is more than that. We have to see partners in other parts of the world. Of course, we have been quite close with our neighbors, Japan, South Korea, China, Australia. Most of us forget to mention Australia, New Zealand, and now India. We see India now, either India or China, reapproach each other. They talk now to each other. So it is a good sign that perhaps in the near future, RCEP could again invite India as the originating parties of the RCEP to join the RCEP. And I think the window should be open for the RCEP countries to improve the agreement by way of taking some good element, relevant element, modern element from the CPTPP. So we can further close the gap between CPTPP and RCEP, or RCEP and CPTPP. And that's the way forward. So it is not really going into global economic disorder, but it is the reconfiguration of global economic order. That's the way I see it, this situation. Back to you, Jenny.
Thank you, Pak Iman. I'm going to use this opportunity to further complicate the question. Something just crossed my mind. This is to the rest of the panelists. Every time we talk about diversifying policy, the strategy of the diversification, the challenge that we face oftentimes is that when diversification is a political decision, oftentimes the economic decision might not tell the same way. and somehow it might not translate to the decisions of the private sectors because it might not be as profitable for now. So how do we sort of synchronize or streamline the political decision to maybe in some countries where it's friendshore or it's just a common broader diversification to streamline between the political calculations and economic calculations. Let me invite first Dr. Nguyen, and then to Professor Todo, and then Pak Jae. Dr.
Yes,
Nguyen?
yeah. And your comment is writing because I think after the Trump tariff, I see the global economic order as moving towards fragmented and political size trade. So trade now not only depend on economic demand from the other country, but international trade also depend on the geopolitical factor. So when we talking about diversification policy, it means that we have to balance relation between the country to country. So for example, the case of Vietnam, when we have foreign trade with any country in the world, such as the US, the China, the ASEAN country, we have to see each other in the chessboard. So it means that we can call it a politicized trade. So that is why now this diversification policy is priority of many countries in the world. And so that is why the Liberation Day tariff is called reciprocal tariff. It means that relation among the country, among the US and the other country. And this is in my mind. And so diversification policy is also not only economic, but also to depend on political factor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let me invite Professor Todo. Please share your view.
Yeah, so the problem is that diversification is costly. And also if private companies pay the cost to diversify their supply chains, then the benefits diffuse to other companies through supply chains. So that means, private companies are disincentivized to diversify their supply chains enough. They wait until other companies are diversified. So that's why we really need policies to achieve optimal level of diversification. So all the governments should realize this issue. And one major policy is information dissemination by public institutions, as I mentioned already. But another thing is policies for innovation. So because to sell your product in a different country, then you need to adjust your product to the local circumstances of the new destination. So then you need to do some innovation, and innovation also needs policies. In that case, and also such an innovation is easier if the destination country and the exporting countries are working together. So that's why. So I mentioned that the research collaboration between Japan and the US is important, but similarly, research collaboration between the two countries is quite important to diversify supply chains. So that's what I want to emphasize here. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Todo. Pak Jay?
Yeah, I think the problem at the moment that all these countries are facing is that everyone is trying to diversify away from the US market at the same time, right? So, this is the problem and this raises the costs of that switching. I think some of these costs will be one-off, and the rest will diminish over time. It's really a decision that needs to be taken, weighing up the cost of eating the tariff, or if you can't eat the tariff, then the loss of market share by passing on the tariff, versus relocating or finding a new market. So I think this is the calculus that firms are going through. And I think if they have the view that an isolationist US market is here to stay, then the sooner they make the switch, the better, right? The discounted value of the change, the cost of the change is lower if you shift sooner rather than later. We'll have to wait and see. So far, we've seen quite a few firms actually making commitments to reshore. You've got, Hyundai and Honda saying, they'll move from Mexico to the US, and even, TMSC and NVIDIA coming up with lots of plans to increase investments in the US. How much of that will actually happen? How much value addition will take place in the US to just bypass the tariff, to get behind the tariff wall? We have to wait and see. So there's lots of ways of responding to this challenge. Diversification will be the main way, but there will be some shifting and reconfiguration of supply chains as well, some of which will be to relocate in the US, but we have to wait and see how much. I don't think it'll be that much, but we have to wait and see.
Pak Jay, just quick one before Pak Iman to close the discussion. Pak Jay, it isn't just from the US that we diversify, right? When you mentioned China-centered trade that we have in ASEAN, as well as if we look into countries like Australia, who's trying to diversify away its reliance from China and so on, oftentimes it needs a big political decision, because economic-wise, it might still not make sense, let's say, right? And so how are we dealing with the other side of the diversification when we want to reduce reliance on Chinese supply chain?
Yeah, so I think that's a good point. I mean, I think Pak Iman also mentioned this. The point here is about reducing reliance on any one or two countries, right? To reduce the cost of country-specific shocks, whatever they might be. At the moment, it's countries that are looking to weaponize trade policies, right? And China has done that, the US has done that, the EU has done it, right? So I think having a more diversified trade pattern is important. The politics and the economics, well, I think we've seen it play out again with the EU-Indonesia CEPA that was recently signed, right? Where compromises are made to facilitate business, right? Compromises at the political level. So the extent to which you want to grandstand on environment needs to give way to economic realities if you're looking to, pursue this reliance on not just the US, but also China. I think the EU is concerned about its heavy reliance on both the US and China. And the same in many ASEAN countries, right? They don't want to be overly reliant on any one or two countries. China features in that scheme as much, not as much as the US at the moment, but as one of the concerns as well, right? Because of country-specific risks. Yeah.
Thank you, Pak Jay. Now over to you, Pak Iman, if you have something to add from the rest of the panelists' answer.
We have a various views on quite strategic points there. But I would say this, at this point in time, the best deal with the US is no deal. In the short term, the US economy will not return to its post or pre-COVID or even pre-Trump 1.0. Media reported that Macy's, CVS, Walgreens, Party City, Cole, Express, Joann, JCPenney, Family Dollar, Big Lots, and others big retail chains in the US closed their outlets. So this year around only 3,500 outlets being closed until the end of the year. So we can see that the US market would not be the same, and in parallel with that, I would like to emphasize the importance of diversification. It will take some cost for companies to switch their value chains, but the cost of sticking to the old value chains will outweigh the cost of developing new value chains with more diversified partners in the context of having a sustainable value chains from regional to global value chains. So I think again, I understand the challenges of diversifying partners, but I think it is time for countries around the table, in particular ASEAN, to take that chance, because otherwise it will be difficult for us to, reinvigorate ASEAN strengths and ASEAN partners in this region. So that's my take from some response to that particular question, Jenny.
Thank you, Pak Iman. Due to time constraint, we need to close the discussion. It has been very insightful. If I may just close it with one sentence from the discussion, I guess it's no longer hoping for the rules-based trade order. Yes, we hope so, but what we can do is to make it an insurance-based trade order, as to diversify and find a space to maneuver and sort of to build one's own insurance. So thank you very much, Pak Iman, Pak Professor Todo, Dr. Jayan, also Dr. Nguyen. It has been very useful for the audience, I believe, and we could talk for hours, but we have limited time. So I'll give the floor back to our MC, Naila.
For moderating today's discussion. And thank you to all the speakers for sharing your incredible insight. Before we wrap up the event, I would like to invite the speakers and everyone for a short photo session. For the team, please help me to take a photo. On my count, everyone. 1, 2, 3. Once again. 1, 2, 3. Thank you, everyone. It has been a fruitful discussion, and I am sure the audience found the session interesting and highly informative. So the event is available for rewatch on FPCI official YouTube channel at Secretariat FPCI. Please, everyone, remember to fill in the Google form link sent in the chat box to get your e-certificate for today's forum. Don't forget to join our conference next week, the ASEAN for the People Conference or AFPC on 4th to 5th October at Sultan Hotel Jakarta. We have more than 20 panel discussion and are joined by 110 civil society organizations across the region. It's free and open for public. Please register through the link sent on the chat box. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into today's discussion. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.